similar to the Voice of San Diego, except for in Newport Beach, all the investors want it to be for-profit, so it's going to be a for-profit paper.
So it's kind of, how much inspired is it by what your wife's doing?
It's going to be a complement to that. We're going to have this daily paper. We're going to have Greer's OC, and then we're going to have one other site, so that all the advertising buys will be across those three sites. And so yeah, my wife's business is doing well. It's rather remarkable in that when I used to work at the Times and she was starting her business, she'd tell me she's gone from 0 subscribers to 10,000 in her first year and a half. And so every time I see the chart, it's the exact opposite of the Times circulation chart, a mirror.
Yeah.
And the revenue is the same way. It's like, it's so nice to be in a growth industry after being at the paper for the last 5 years.
I was struck as someone who lived half his life as a Christian, half as a Jew, how very Christian your journey was. For instance, all the texts that start chapters almost all come from the New Testament. And then as a Jew, I kept feeling, yeah, this is Christian. Look, it's his heart. It's religion of the heart.
Right.
That's what kept striking me. This is a very Christian journey that you went on.
Yeah, I mean, it's my story, and it's I was Christian, so there's not going to be a lot of other faiths in there.
How dangerous is the serious practice of journalism to one's religious life?
Oh, God. I was always, and this is probably a failing of mine if I really believe my faith, but I was always a journalist first, and so I was always, wanting to get the story and not really caring about, or not being concerned really at all about the consequences. I kind of felt in the back of my mind that as long as the truth got out, that would be good for the institution or the faith. I think it's hard to kind of all over the map here, but it's not, the newsroom is not the most conducive environment to people of faith, just because you're fairly isolated. You can find people of faith in there, but it's not like finding a Democrat in the newsroom. It's a little tougher. And so there are times you feel isolated and you can't talk, and there are things that you do that, is that what, if you're a Christian, is that what you're commanded by Jesus to do, to, go knock on a door of a father of a, accident victim to ask how he feels? There are things that conflict with your faith that you got to sort of reconcile.
How easy was it at the LA Times to be, say, out about your homosexuality, as opposed to being out about your evangelical Christianity?
I don't think there's any problem being out about homosexuality. Zero. And I don't want to get the impression that it's some oppressive environment in the Times. It's just not the norm, and a lot of people just don't quite know how to deal with it. I think when I heard some. I heard some whispers here and there that some people were uneasy that an evangelical Christian was covering the religion beat, as though I was going to be proselytizing on it. And I've never heard that concern, having a Democrat cover, President Bush. Mm-hmm. And I found it really insulting to me. But in it's almost a benign neglect, how they maybe ignore or don't know of a certain kind of faith, as opposed to some sort of hostile persecution of people.
I did a project where I interviewed all the editors of the parochial Jewish press, the Jewish weeklies, such as the Jewish Journal of Los Angeles, etc. Mm-hmm. And many of the editors told me that if you covered a synagogue with much scrutiny, you'd destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the idea of like covering a church with much scrutiny? Or
I think that you should do it as I think that's I think as much scrutiny as you possibly can is good. I don't think if there's corruption or malfeasance within that institution, it should be brought to light of day. For the members' sake, for the community's sake, and these are tax-free institutions. So in a way, they're underwritten by the rest of the rest of America, and I just don't think if they can't hold up to scrutiny, I think that's their problem, and I get that quite a bit, especially covering the Catholic Church. It's like, when are you going to stop? This is a good institution. You got to stop hammering on it. But I think as long as there's stories there and there's scandal there, it needs to be. I think it's better to be brought out in the light of day.
I broke the story about Mayor Villaraigosa's marriage failing.
Right.
To me, it's a story who the mayor is sleeping with. That's the story, even without any other values. And so I'm wondering, do you think it's a story who the mayor is sleeping with, and do you think it's a story who a pastor is sleeping with? Even if there's no other, let's assume it's not a child. Let's say
Yeah. I think there has to be some sign of hypocrisy before it becomes a news story. I think the fact that the woman the mayor was having an affair with was reporting on him, makes it, no question, a big story. I think that a pastor who, rails against homosexuality and is having a, gay affair, I think that's fair. Really, pastors are in sort of a different league, because I think if they're having an extramarital affair, that's obviously against their scripture, so they're supposed to be good moral people. But I think for others, it's a case-by-case basis. I think if the mayor was, let's say he was separated and he was dating on the side, is that a news story? I don't think so.
Wow, so the CEO of a huge city, here's the argument anyway, I'm just going to give you the argument and let you respond. So the CEO of a huge city, let's say you're sleeping with someone, he's dating and sleeping with someone, I would expect from a common sense standpoint that whoever he's sleeping with has some effect on him, and therefore it's newsworthy.
Yeah, see, I guess I disagree. I think that if he was sleeping with a waitress or someone who has no influence on the city, I don't see the news story. If he's sleeping with a key lobbyist or the head of some big company that's getting favors from the city, then I think it becomes a news story.
What if it's the editor of the LA Times?
I think it's a big story. I think where there's a potential for conflict, I think that's a legitimate news story.
You ever struck how when there are changes made at a newspaper, someone gets fired or let go from a position, the newspaper always responds, "This is an internal matter and we don't discuss these personnel matters"?
Yeah,
if the mayor or anyone else, tried to pull that, the journalists wouldn't give them, any mercy.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that newspapers in general, and TV is no different, but they build this relationship up, or they try to build this relationship up with the reader, and then if the person is let go or if moved a beat or whatever, they're just they just vanish. And I really liked how I was listening to the last day of 97.1, the talk FM talk,